Good morning. There we go. This is pretty early for me. I'm on the left, sort of on the left coast. So everybody in California is probably still sleeping. Or they're at work. This is a video with a guy named Cameron Bertuzzi, and he's interviewing a guy named Greg Koukl. Who are these people? They're apologists of differing success levels. Who was here first? I need to congratulate the people who come here first. Royal Wolf 7. Yes, you are first. And since I like wolves, we'll give you 1,500 Pine points. And Peter's number 2. And so there's a couple things in this video that I found very interesting. And the first thing was that Greg Koukl defends eternal torment like a champ, like a pro. Like, unbelievable. The second thing I found interesting was their discussion about street epistemology and Greg Koukl's version of street epistemology called tactics. Oh, he's going to hate it when I put it that way. And I want to, hang on a second. I want to read something to you guys from a long time ago, because this guy named Cameron Bertuzzi really pushed back hard on street epistemology. What was it, Reed? Like a year or two ago? And I was in his Facebook group, and I was asking a lot of questions, and I eventually was blocked. And the last thing I remember being blocked, as soon as you're blocked, what you say goes away. But the last thing I remember talking about was asking them to admit that Jesus Christ might not have been raised from the dead or something like that, or that they could be wrong about Christianity. It's a simple thing to ask, really. I got with Braxton Hunter and Jonathan Pritchard, 2 apologists, to admit that yesterday, that Christianity could be false and Jesus Christ couldn't have risen from the dead. But anyhow, I got blocked for asking that question on Cameron Bertuzzi's channel. But I think he would say I got blocked because I was practicing street epistemology. Now, this interview that I'm about to play is really interesting because in this interview, Greg Koukl admits that street epistemology is basically, well, it's very similar to street epistemology. So I got blocked doing the things that Greg Koukl teaches Christians to do, which is so ironic. And I want to show, when I was asking questions of Christians on Cameron Bertuzzi's, what's the name of his channel, or his Capturing Christianity, right? Capturing Christianity. When I was asking questions, Cameron Bertuzzi said that I can ask questions, but I need to warn Christians first that I'm about to ask them questions. That I should probably tell Christians that I'm an atheist and my goal is to raise doubt in them and try to lead them to hell. I should warn them about that and warn them that I use things like Jedi mind tricks and trickery. You guys think I'm lying when I'm saying this, right? But I'm not. In fact, I have evidence. I'm hyperbolizing a little bit and paraphrasing, but let's see if I have it here. That's not it. There we go. Now, this was in a private message, but I can say this because he publicly posted this himself. Cameron Bertuzzi publicly posted this himself later. But this was initially as a private message on Facebook between me and him. And I asked him point blank, you said I should warn Christians that I'm about to ask them questions. I asked him to write out for me the warning. What exactly, how should I put it? And this is what he wrote. He wrote, street epistemologists uses, actually the top, hang on a second. Let me scroll this. This is what he asked me to say as a caveat, as a warning to his fellow Christians. The administrators of Capturing Christianity have asked me, an avid street epistemologist, to notify my interlocutors of the script I'll be using moving forward. My ultimate goal is to in you a sense of doubt about whatever it is you claim to believe. We street epistemologists do this by asking a series of unending questions about your existing, but more importantly, your hypothetical psychological states. These hypothetical scenarios are carefully crafted to get you to doubt your current beliefs. While ineffectual at the epistemological level, they are curiously effective at the psychological level. Be on the lookout. Also take note of my feigned cordiality. I'm treating you as I would a drug addict. If you see me as a threat, you're less likely to entertain the charade. Lastly, don't let the name street epistemologist fool you. I am no expert in epistemology. What really interests me is your psychology, not your epistemology. With that in mind, would you like me to continue and ask you questions? So, and in this video I'm about to play, Cameron asked Greg Koukl about his version of street epistemology called Tactics, the Colombo method, and asks about if they're similar. And Greg Koukl admits, yes, they're very similar. In fact, I think the exact words are very little difference. And so why is it that an atheist like me needs to warn Christians that I'm about to ask them questions, but the Christian doesn't when they practice Greg Koukl's tactics? And this is what another thing that Cameron posted about street epistemology. Street epistemologists use a script with an ultimate goal to invoke a sense of doubt about whatever it is you claim to believe. Street epistemologists do this by asking a series of unending questions about your existing, but more importantly, your hypothetical psychological states. These hypothetical scenarios are carefully crafted to get you to doubt. Oh, is this basically the same thing? Yeah, it is. Okay, it's the same things I read the first time. My apologies. I thought it was a little bit different. But so I want you guys to keep this in mind, that there's this, I guess, a double standard of don't ask questions to raise doubt in Christians. That's bad. But feel free to ask questions of non-Christians, because that's good. We have the truth. That's good. We are going to defend and get you to see the truth. That's good. Those other people, not just atheists, non-Christians, don't have the truth. That's bad. So we can ask questions. We can to try to get them to doubt their non-belief in Christianity, but not the other way around. At least not according to Cameron Bertuzzi. Okay, enough of the prologue. Let's get to the video.
Using a lot of noise.
Oh, that's way too fast. Let's slow it down.
Can they do this with questions, you think?
Yeah, they could do it with questions, depending.
I'm thinking primarily
of a specific circumstance.
Street epistemologists. I don't know if how familiar you are with that.
Peter Boghossian and his crowd. In fact, I had a regular caller on my show that was a disciple of Boghossian and had
a regular caller on his show. I think he's talking about me, and I called in only twice, so I don't know if that's twice as maybe for Greg Koukl's show twice is regular enough. But yeah, I called in twice. The first time I basically just listened to Greg, because Greg is a talker. I think Christians will even admit this. He's a talker. He talks. So the first time I mostly just listened. It was probably 90% him, 10% me. The second time I tried to be more aggressive and get some words in, and it was like 80% him, 20% me, and he almost hung up on me. I had to walk it's on my channel, but I had to walk a fine line just to stay on the line with Greg Koukl.
Used his stuff, and so he's engaging me on that. It's a lot easier to use the tactical approach when you have the truth. It's a lot harder, and therefore you need more rhetoric or histrionics or whatever if you don't have the truth.
Yeah, so it's way harder for them to ask these questions and to engage this way because they don't have the truth. See how that just what is your internal psychological state when I say that, Christians? It's hard for you to ask questions of non-Christians because you don't have the truth. Doesn't that bother you a little bit? Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
What the street epistemologist crowd does, and just to bring your listeners up to speed here, this is a kind of tactics for atheists. And
it's not just for atheists, it can be for anyone. In fact, if it's a tactic for atheists, and if street epistemology and your method, called the Colombo method or tactics for Christians method, whatever, if they're very, very similar, then it's also a tactic for Christians.
I've seen videos of the people who use this technique, the atheists, talking to Christians, and all they do is ask questions about the justification Christians have for their views. So you have faith. Why do you believe in God? Well, I just have faith. Well, why do you believe in Jesus? Well, I have faith. I mean, what it comes down to is just their naked belief because of the community that they've grown up in and whatever.
Right.
They don't have any good reasons for it. And people like that are deeply vulnerable to a challenge like this, a mere question. It isn't as if the so-called street...
I would posit that Greg Koukl's vulnerable to questions like this. I would dare to say anybody is vulnerable to questions like this, because belief is such a multifaceted phenomenon, and it's complicated. We have many reasons and factors why we believe certain things, and sometimes it's hard just to parse it out and critically examine why we believe things. It's hard for everyone.
The epistemology crowd has all this really good evidence against Christianity. That's not what they're taught. They're taught to ask questions to cause doubt to arise in the heart of the Christian.
Is that bad? Is it bad to cause your Christian parent listening? I'm going to stroke your heartstrings here. Why is it bad for a guy like me to ask questions of your 20-year-old child and cause doubt in Christianity in them? Why is that bad?
Because they can't answer a simple challenge. They can't give any good reason for their own faith. They just have empty faith. And this is the way Boghossian defines faith, something along the lines of belief you have no right to. You have no good reason for it, you know.
Yeah, Boghossian does define it as pretending to know things you don't know. More of the blind faith type definition. And Boghossian put that in his book, but I think Boghossian would be the first person to admit that when he's having a conversation, and if he's asking questions only, as Greg Koukl says, then if one of the questions is, how do you define faith? Then the person answers and you go with it. You let the person define faith. I just put on a Facebook last night, one of Greg Koukl's colleagues, I believe, what's his name, Tim Barnett, made a comment about street epistemology. These guys are still thinking about it. They're worried about it. It's in the back of their brain. And he made the comment that Peter Boghossian was straw-manning the word faith. And I told Tim Barnett yesterday that I want you to sit down when I say this. I hope you're sitting down when I say this. But it does not matter one lick, doesn't matter at all what the Bible says about faith. I know Christians freak out about this. I don't know. My guess is. But it doesn't, because we're talking about real conversations with real people. And when you ask them what faith is, if they bring up faith and then you ask them what it is, you go with their definition. Whether you think it's right or wrong, for the sake of argument, for the sake of the conversation, you go with their definition. It does not matter what Greg Koukl's version of Christianity says faith is.
Thinking you know things you don't know at all.
Pretending to know
Pretending,
things,
yeah. And so when Christians are in Christian environments and everybody's pretending, then there's no threat. But when they get in a non-Christian environment and somebody begins asking these questions, this creates problems for them. Okay.
What's the difference between...
Okay, here it is. Now remember, for people who came late, I just read a scathing indictment on street epistemology. Cameron Bertuzzi does not like street epistemology used on people in his own Facebook group. I was blocked for doing so. Now listen to this question Cameron Bertuzzi asks, and listen very carefully to Greg Kokel's answer.
Is asking these questions, this creates problems for them. Okay.
What's the difference between the straight epistemology approach and the tactical approach? What are like the primary differences between the two? Because they both involve asking questions, right? So what are some of the biggest differences?
Well,
would you say?
In one sense, there's very little difference in the tactical game plan, because think of it as.
In one sense, there's very little difference, and yet I need to warn people before asking questions when I do it. But yet there's, in one sense, very little difference. Now, the sense that there is a difference, we're going to get to.
Pardon me, the game plan is kind of formal categories. So first you gather information, okay? And then you reverse the burden of proof. We haven't got to that yet. But when somebody says something is so, okay, God exists, or God doesn't exist, that's a claim, okay? Now, if the atheist says God doesn't exist, the Christian thinks it's his job.
Good for you, Greg Kokel. When you make a claim, you got to defend it.
To give
if you want somebody to believe it.
Reasons against that view. It's our job to refute. But the rule of burden of proof is that the person who makes the claim bears the responsibility to give the reasons.
I actually think Christians hate it when atheists don't admit there is no God. Please, we want you to say that so we can make you prove it. It's like a lot of atheists and Christians, I think they're scared to make the claim because then they have to defend it.
So if a Christian says...
Now, I'm not scared to make the claim that the Christian God probably doesn't exist. Like, really high confidence in that one. But I will not make a categorical statement that there are no gods, full stop. I will not, so I don't have to defend that claim.
Says that God does exist, it's our job to give reasons why we think that's the case. But if the atheist said God doesn't exist, it's not our job to refute him first. It's his job to defend, okay? And so, so in the case of the street epistemologists, they're aware of these kinds of things, but they're trying to put the Christian in the awkward position with their questions.
Yeah, it's very awkward to have to say why you believe something, right? It's awkward to answer the question, why do you believe in Jesus? It's really awkward. Even though they're taught, be ready to give a reason for the hope you might have, 1 Peter 3:15. It's very awkward to answer why you love Jesus, why you believe it's true.
Okay. And in a certain sense, it's the same thing that I want to do with my questions, but it's not abusive.
It's not abusive when Greg Kokel asks questions, but it is abusive when I do it because I'm raising doubt in Christianity, and he's not. He has the truth.
And in some ways, it's not abusive even from the street epistemologists.
Oh, good. Good. In some ways, it's not abusive.
He says, what do you believe? Gathering information. I believe God exists. Why do you think God exists? Because I was raised that way. Okay, is that a good reason to believe that God exists because you were raised that way?
No.
What are you, like 20 years old? So you're basically a grown-up? So because mommy and daddy...
You notice he's poo-pooing Christians right now. You understand what he's doing, right? He's imitating a stupid Christian.
Says so? Is that still a reason to believe? I mean, notice that's a question, but that does go to epistemology.
Stupid strong, ignorant, or not well thought through on things.
Oh, gee. Is that a good reason for an adult to believe something that mommy and daddy says so? No, it's not. Probably, in most cases.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a good reason to believe in Jesus, believe that Christianity is true because mommy and daddy said so. Although John Piper, I have him on record saying that is a good reason, and he even quoted a verse on that. But the thing is, with street epistemology, or with me, I'll go even further than that. Is anonymous texts writing that they saw that Jesus appeared to them a good reason? Really? Is Paul saying that Jesus appeared to him a good reason to believe such a claim? Really? Is the fact that you felt the Holy Spirit in your life, is that a good reason? Really? Is the fact that you think you saw a miracle or a coincidence that you just can't explain, is that a good reason to believe in Christianity? Really? Is the fact that you can't explain where we come from, why there's something rather than nothing, is that a good reason? Really? I'm talking about Christianity, not just the God. The belief Christianity, is that a good reason to believe in Christianity, just because you can't explain where we came from? And I tell you, when you go down the list of every reason, I just feel the divine sense that Christianity is true. Is that a good reason to believe in Christianity? Really? The presence of evil? Is that the good reason to believe in Christianity? Really? You can go down that list, and I'll tell you, when you start delving deep into that stuff, a lot of these reasons become just as foolish, Greg Kokel, as because mommy and daddy told me so.
You know?
Too much?
It's okay when you're 7, but when you're 17, 18, 19, 20, that's not going to cut it. And if they don't have, the Christians now, don't have a response, then they're going to think that their view is not defensible, which is exactly what the atheist wants them to think. The methodology is fine. It's clean.
The methodology is fine. It's clean. Oh, this is so priceless. This is so priceless. The methodology of straight epistemology is fine. It's clean. Although they use a script with the ultimate goal to invoke a sense of doubt, whatever you claim to believe, unending questions, to raise doubt on your hypothetical psychological states. It's crafted to doubt your current beliefs. It's curiously effective on your psychological level. Be on the lookout, because it's method. The method is good. It's clean. I can tell you, Cameron Bertuzzi is not liking Greg Kokel's answer right now because it doesn't fit. But these guys are bad. How can bad people like atheists ask us questions to raise doubt in us, and you call this method good? Greg, help me out.
It's being used on Christians who have no answers. I use exactly the same methodology. A couple weeks ago.
This is gold. For a lot of you listening to this, you don't care. For guys like me and Reed who do a lot of Socratic questioning, this is absolute gold.
I use exactly the same methodology.
I use the exact same methodology, but for some reason, I don't think Cameron Bertuzzi for 1 second would ask Greg Kokel to give a disclaimer before he asks questions of non-Christians. Why? He's using the exact same method as me. Why wouldn't Cameron do that? Well, because Greg Kokel has the truth. And Doug's lost. We don't want our youth to go to hell. I actually think this is, I don't know if it's so much the case. Well, we're going to talk about hell coming up.
A couple weeks ago, I talked to a person who's Muslim. And in a cab, just driving the cab to the airport. And I asked him, are you a Muslim because you think Islam is true or because you were raised that way?
See, that's a horrible question. Greg Kokel, I don't know if you're explaining that scenario correctly, but if you are, that's a horrible question. You did terribly. That's wrong, bad, no. You don't ask that. Listen to this.
And I asked him, are you a Muslim because you think Islam is true or because you were raised that way?
Why not just ask him, why are you a Muslim? Instead of giving him just 2 choices to choose from. Do you see, Greg Kokel? In retrospect, I'm sure you're thinking, oh, okay, I actually didn't ask it that way. Like that's the only save you have left. But you haven't even begun, Greg. This is my famous phrase, right, Reed? You haven't even begun to study how to ask people questions properly, if that's the way you ask them. Poor Greg.
He said, well, I was raised that way.
Yeah, Reed says, don't put words in someone's mouth, especially if you care about their soul and eternal destiny.
That way. And I asked, do you think that's a good reason to believe in a religion? Just because you were raised that way. So
Yeah, it's a good reason to believe Jesus rose from the dead because an old book says so. Is that really?
willing to ask the exact same questions, okay? The problem here is the Christians are not prepared to answer.
I agree with that. I would say even non-Christians are not prepared to answer some of these questions. Belief is a complicated thing.
There's nothing wrong with the tactical approach. It's that the Christians are not prepared to answer. Here's the difference between the two, though. Christians have the ability to answer.
Yeah, okay, this is good. Now we're getting to the differences.
Here's the difference between the two, though. Christians have the ability to answer. Christianity has answers to all of those things. Atheism does not have the answers.
I need answers. I feel like weeping right now. It's like you can just tell. It reminds me of William Lane Craig and all these personal testimonies. It's like if something doesn't have the answer for me, then it must be false. It's almost, he's not saying that. Let me be clear. He's not saying that. But you can just see it oozing out of the pores in his face that I need answers. And Christianity gives me those answers.
So when we ask the questions of the atheist, okay, wow, they're also going to be, in many cases, without answers.
Yeah, sometimes I say I don't know, Greg Kokel. This is I remembered this is one thing Cameron Bertucci did not like when I said it, but I mean it. I think in a lot of ways, agnostic atheism, however you want to call it, the being open to belief revision, not believing but saying you're open to changing your mind, is far more intellectually honest than guys like Greg Kokel, the guy you're looking at right now. He takes the position, I have the truth. I take the position that someone who values truth admits that they may not currently possess it. You know, fence-sitting Christians listening to Greg Kokel and listening to me going, oh man, I hate it when that atheist makes sense.
Because there are no answers in their case. Atheism is the answerless worldview. There is no God, there is no meaning, there is no rationality ultimately. We can't defend it. It's just molecules in motion.
I need meaning, I need purpose, I need hope, I need to be special. Therefore, Christianity is true. He's not saying this. He's not saying this, but you can feel it. You can see it. It's oozing. It's like, these are, I think, a lot of the reasons people are in religions and look for, like even secular humanism gives a meaning, hope, purpose. It's, I think, a human condition.
Cosmos is all there is, ever was, or ever will be. You know, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference, to quote Richard Dawkins. It's the nothing worldview. So when all of the questions of meaning and significance and morality and evil, the problem of evil, atheists have the problem of evil too. They live in a world they acknowledge as evil. How do you make sense of that? We can make sense of it. Fits our story, not theirs.
We can make sense of it. Atheists can't. Well, I can make sense of evil. We're animals. Animals hurt each other, and animals also help each other. Animals kill each other, and animals care for one another, show empathy. We are animals that exhibit the same behaviors as other higher primates. That explains what we call evil, what we call good. I have an explanation. Greg Kokel has an explanation. I think my explanation fits the evidence. We just simply disagree. It's not like when Greg Kokel paints this picture like, we can explain things and you can't. Number one, sure, there's some things we can't explain or I can't explain. I'll keep personal. And I'm not sad about that. But it seems like Greg Koukl does get sad when he can't explain things because he needs to explain things. And when we can explain things, or when I can explain things, Greg Koukl will say, no, that's not an explanation. That's just your opinion. Okay. And you're going with an opinion found in an old book.
There are two ways I think that your tactics are different from...
Okay, so Cameron Bertuzzi, I think, does not like the answer that Greg Koukl just gave, because Greg Koukl, I forget the exact words he used, very much similar to street epistemology, what he does, based on the method, it's the same. He used words like that. I think he even said, I don't want to quote the exact words, but this is not good for Cameron Bertuzzi because he wants a difference.
Fits our story, not theirs.
Here are two ways I think that your tactics are different from the street epistemology approach. One of those is that, well, first of all, you have a chapter in your book called Just the Facts. Right, where you explain that you need to give facts in some of these situations. They call for facts.
Right.
And in the street epistemology approach, you don't have that at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think that many of the objections to Christianity that are raised by people like atheists are just based on bad information.
That's not the question, the point Cameron Bertuzzi was getting at. Cameron Bertuzzi is saying, look, these street epistemologists, they don't make assertions. They don't make claims. They're just asking questions. They're not delving into the facts. They're just listening. That's bad, right? That's kind of what he's saying.
Not on the facts. Like religion causes more bloodshed than everything else, and that's not true. But
I'm thinking of the street epistemologists because they are strictly all about asking questions. They're not giving arguments for atheism, the truth of atheism.
So in that, I think the tactical approach is good. But we have the facts on our side, and so I was saying that atheism is
we have the facts on our side. Now, I know it's kind of a pet peeve of mine, but that apologists like Greg Koukl always pit against atheists. But really, what he's saying now, and I think even Christians will admit this, what he's saying now is when he says we have the facts on our side, he's talking about Christianity versus everything else. We have the facts on our side, not the Jews. We have the facts on our sides, not the Muslims. We have the facts on our sides, not the Hindus, not the Buddhists, not the Taoists. It's like, but it seems like in conversations like this in the United States, it's always against the atheists. Why? Because they feel threatened by the atheists.
Nothing point of view. So when we press them on these questions, they don't have answers because there are no answers for them to have. Native to their worldview is a kind of nihilism or a nothingism, okay? In Christianity, a lot of Christians don't have the answers, so they're vulnerable to that approach, but it isn't because the answers aren't available. The answers are available. We have a robust worldview.
Yes, we have the answer. We have a robust worldview. Forgive me, Greg Koukl, when I say this, but Mormons say the same thing, and you deem them false. We have a robust worldview. We have the answers. Islam says the same thing. Forgive me for saying this, but you deem them false. I could go on and on and on. Of all the religions who believe that their worldview has the answers and is the more robust worldview, that doesn't mean your worldview is correct because you have answers. And I'm sure Greg Koukl would admit this. Just because our worldview is robust and we have answers doesn't mean it's correct.
And this is why Just the Facts, ma'am, can play in certain cases because people are trading on bad information to...
Joseph Patterson makes a great point. He is talking about his particular Christianity, one of many Christianities. That is true. In fact, in about 10, 15, 20 minutes from now, I'll be playing something talking about hell. And there's a lot of Christians who are going to be disgusted, I think. I actually haven't heard it yet. I've heard bits. But I think they're going to be disgusted on the views of Greg Koukl and hell and Cameron Bertuzzi. Although I think I'm a betting man, and I bet Cameron Bertuzzi's view on hell has changed over the last 5 years.
Convey against Christian views, and if we know that's bad information, then we can just point that out. That's not going to work because as Dennis Prager, the radio talk show host, says, first tell the truth, then give your opinion. And he means that your opinion has to be informed by facts. It can't be informed by false beliefs. And so I think that's a good point. That's one distinction. But you said that
we use Socratic questioning to figure out, to critically examine these beliefs and see if we should have confidence that they are indeed true or not.
there are two different things.
But Greg Koukl comes from the position that, no, they are true. We do have the truth. Now let's defend it. Street epistemology says, well, maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. Let's examine it together.
Yeah.
Which is more intellectually honest to you guys? Like, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's like one is far superior when it comes to truth than Greg Koukl's version. Apologetics is, we have the truth, now let's defend it. Street epistemology is, maybe you have the truth, maybe you don't. Let's talk about it, let's critically examine it. Like, Christians, really? Like, isn't one sound a little bit better than the other?
The other one is that they target.
So now I'm interviewing you.
Oh yeah. So they target people who are they target lay Christians. Okay, they target Christians on the street. They don't really target philosophers.
Yeah.
Who's they? I target philosophers and apologists all the time.
People who are.
They're not going to go after me.
No.
Yeah.
They're not going to go after me. Oh, really? And what? I just caught. This is so petty of me, I think. But
On the street, they don't really target philosophers or people who are.
They're not going to go after me.
No.
they're not going to go after me. And he just said, I had a few minutes ago, he said, I have a regular caller. He's talking about me, who called in and is a street epistemology disciple. They don't target me.
Oh, no, not really. I mean, some of them may want to interview you, but they're not going to go out and find the people who are apologists and philosophers.
Right.
Like, there's no street epistemologists at this philosophy conference right now.
Right.
Right? And so,
What conference are they at? I don't know. In this video, we talk about tactics. I'll tell you what. Here's a deal, Cameron Bertuzzi. I don't know what conference this is, but I'm sure it's an annual thing. Next year, invite me and Reed Nicewander to come down, or me and Anthony Magnabosco, or Anthony Magnabosco and Reed. It doesn't matter. Yeah, if you want us to come to your top level apologists and ask you questions. See, this is the thing. They think this is like a winning or losing type thing. All it is figuring out why you believe and critically examining it.
I think that's another difference there, is that the tactical approach can work on anybody, right? And you use it that way, and you have different scenarios and situations, and you explain what to do in these different situations depending on who the person is. Mm-hmm. But for the street epistemology approach, their target is unsuspecting Christians who haven't really thought through their beliefs.
Exactly.
Their target is those unsuspecting Christians. Okay, let's assume that's true. Let's assume that is 100% true. Whose fault is that they're unsuspecting? You're indicting yourself, Cameron Bertuzzi, if you call yourself an apologist or a leader in the church of any sense, if you call yourself a shepherd or a pastor or anyone whose goal is to defend and help others defend the Christian faith. If they are unsuspecting and unprepared, that's not my fault. That's the church's fault. Admit it. I bet you they would. In fact, I haven't watched this. Maybe Greg Koukl will admit it right now.
Exactly.
And so that's a big difference to me.
Yeah.
There's another difference I can point out too.
Yeah.
But
Well, let me just add something to that.
Okay.
And then, and that is,
By the way, this is why I think they focus on street epistemology, because they want parents to send them money so their kids don't, so they are prepared, so they don't get bamboozled by those evil street epistemologists.
that with our approach, I think we could easily go to the street epistemologist atheists. In other words, these are people that are on the move.
Bring
these
it.
are people that are doing their own Great Commission.
I just read the other day something about Scholar Fiction inviting Cameron Bertuzzi to a debate or something like that, and Cameron Bertuzzi is saying no. Well, Cameron Bertuzzi, you should take Greg Koukl's advice here.
People that are on the move. These are people that are doing their own Great Commission. They're evangelists for their view. okay? We're not trying to just pick off the village atheist. We'll go after these guys in the sense that we'll be willing to.
Oh, you guys hear? I don't want to say this is a lie. I don't want to say that. But this sounds really fishy to me. When we ask questions, we don't go after the village idiot. We go after the top brass. Really? What do you call evangelism into third world countries where you give them food, but along comes a message, a proselytizing message with it, either before or after you feed them? What do you call it when someone has lost their spouse or their family in a car accident? They're not Christians and they're just devastated. And the deacon in the community goes and preaches the gospel to them in their most vulnerable state. What do you call that? Like, this is disgusting what you're saying right now, Greg Kokel, if you believe what you're saying. I personally know situations where Christian leaders, Christians in general, will target people who are hurting the most and proselytizing to them and asking them questions and trying to lead them to Christ. And it's effective. The best way to get Christians is to get them get the non-believer when they are the most vulnerable, when they're the most desperate. Because that's when the need is the greatest, right, Greg Kokel? They need Jesus at that point. And when the need is high, the answer is strong.
To engage them.
I've had a debate with
tactical in using in a conversation because again, my conviction that they are going to wither when they are asked the right questions.
They're going to wither when they're asked the right questions. I strongly disagree with you, Greg Kokel, and here's why. I'm not defensive. I'm not insecure. You ask me a tough question, I say, I don't know. Let me think about it. If you ask me a question that makes me look foolish in front of all my atheist friends, I don't care. But it seems like when I ask certain apologists to come on my show, oh, no, Doug uses these Weasley tactics and he's going to make me look bad and put words in my mouth and do all these tricks and stuff. I tell you, Christians, be the better man, be the better woman than me. So, you know what? I don't care if Doug entraps me and makes me look bad. I have the truth. Jesus is on my side.
But notice something, and I want to hear your third point in just a second, but notice something here. What is successful about their approach? What's successful is they are asking questions that cause doubts to rise in the minds of the Christian.
Yeah, is doubt bad?
What are they doing? They're putting a stone in the shoe of the Christian.
Yes, and this is exactly what he says.
This is exactly the same thing that I'm suggesting.
Yes, that's exactly the same thing. But yet Cameron Bertuzzi wants me to warn people when it happens. But when Greg Kokel or Christian evangelicals do it, no warning necessary, because they have the truth.
I'm trying to show the power of that. You know, sometimes we get asked questions and we don't know how to answer it, but we put on a strong face or whatever, like, well, whatever, it doesn't bother me kind of thing. But inside we're thinking, oh man, that was a good question. I don't know how to deal with that. And this little icy doubt arises in our hearts, okay? That's a stone. He's
admitting some great things here. He's admitting that Christians doubt when we ask questions. When I say we, I mean non-Christians, not just atheists. Jews, when you ask questions of Christians about why Jesus is not the Messiah. Muslims, when you ask questions of Christians about the Trinity and so forth, some of your questions do raise doubt in Christians.
That they put in our shoe, all right? So it works both directions. And even though people are resistant, doing our little gardening and asking the right questions, especially when it's not rhetorical cover for a bad argument, but it really goes to the heart of the issue, and there's more about that in the book proper as I develop the ideas. That can really make a huge difference. But number 3.
So number 3 is that really about the motivation behind why they do it. And one of the things I love that you said.
Oh, this is going to be sweet. I haven't heard this, but it's okay. Without hearing this, I'm going to say, what does my motivation matter? Christians, if I told you up front, my motivation is to lead you to hell. Now, can I ask you questions? Should that really make a difference on your ability to answer my questions? Or are you so fearful that I am under the power of Satan and that there's a spiritual warfare that just by me asking questions and telling you my motivation is to lead you to hell, that you have to run for the hills?
Was how you want to be a virtuous person. And part of the reason why you go and do this is because there's a great commission.
That's right.
And we're called to do this. We're called to love people. That is the reason why we do it, because it's for virtuous, moral reasons.
Right. We evangelize for virtuous, moral reasons. That could be true. I'll give you that. But I wonder how much money plays a part in you, Cameron, and you, Greg Kokel. You got a nice little side business going here, Cameron, don't you? I hear you asking money a lot. And I suspect your followers get a sense of, yes, when you let the atheists have it. And that helps you get more Patreon support and so forth. Yes, Great Commission, Jesus commanded it, but it doesn't hurt when you can make a living off it as well, right?
But in a lot of cases...
Too far? Is that too much? Reed, did I go too far?
With street epistemologists, it's not really about that. And the tactics that they use are really just manipulative.
Yeah. Well, there's weighty matters.
See, again, Cameron's trying to get Greg to say that street epistemology and the Columbo method, the tactics method that he espouses, are different. And so now he's going to motivations, and so let's see what Greg says here.
Matters are at stake. And this is why Christians are willing to stand in the line of fire.
What did he just say?
Manipulative.
Yeah. Well, there's weighty matters are at stake.
Weighty matters are at stake. Greg Kokel, for those of you who don't know, we have a history. And I called into his show, and I made a meme that he got really upset about, and it was that Christianity is basically a religion of carrots and sticks. And listen to what he's saying, that there's weighty matters at stake. What is he talking about? You notice he doesn't say hell, but that's what he's talking about. He's talking about eternal life. Life on earth is but a vapor, it says in the book of James. He's talking about after we die, heaven and hell. These are the weighty matters, carrots and sticks.
And this is why Christians are willing to stand in the line of fire, because there are weighty matters at stake. I think this is a very fair question to ask. It's one I should ask more of atheists. It isn't like I get in conversations with atheists a lot. Most of my friends are Christians, kind of thing. Unless atheists call me on the air, which they...
Why don't you call me on the air, Greg Kokel? You're invited to come on my show. In fact, if anybody has Greg Kokel's ear, knows him well, is listening to this live right now, let him know right now, and tweet me. Let me open my Twitter. At P1, PineCreek, but I is a 1. It's in my About tab. Let me know right now. Greg Kokel, you're invited to come on right now.
I do on occasion. But those who live in or traffic in a campus environment or a highly secularized environment, those are the people we're training, we're giving information to. This podcast, for example, or this broadcast. That I think it would be fair to ask an atheist, what is it that gives you, explain your sense of urgency about these issues, explain your sense of mission about what you do.
Excellent question. Oh, I wish you were here and asking me this question in person. What's my sense of urgency? I do think that Christianity, your version of it, let me be very clear. Greg Kokel, I think your version of Christianity is heinous, is evil, is terrible, hurts people, causes pain and suffering. I wish that I would have met PineCreek when I was in my early 20s and saved me the pain and suffering and misery of disappointing my God and just thinking about it. How many people have gotten married into bad situations because they felt God led them to that situation, and that it's better to get married than suffer in lust, and premarital sex is horrible, and all your thoughts about sexual stuff is just horrible and a sin, and you've committed adultery in your heart. These are evil teachings. The fact that people are punished in eternal torment, which is the type of hell I believe, Greg Kokel, you believe in. These are evil, terrible things that you believe that hurt people and cause pain and suffering. And I think people should hear guys like me say, hey, you don't have to believe this. You'll be just okay without it. So there's an answer to your question, Greg Kokel. What's the sense of urgency? I'm paying for my sins right now. I'm making up for the years that I hurt people as a Christian. Now, you can call me a bad Christian back then or no Christian at all. That's fine. I don't care. But this is my penance. This is my way of making up amends. So that's my sense. And you know what? For a lot of ex-Christians in the United States and Canada, they have a similar story to me. They feel they were lied to and that their life has been wasted.
Explain.
That's kind of harsh, but you know what I mean.
Explain why it seems you think you're on the high moral ground pursuing what you're doing and trying to defeat Christians.
You see... You see what he did there? It's like, how dare you have the high moral ground? And yet he does the exact same thing.
Pursuing what you're doing and trying to defeat Christians or theists in general from their view. Because strictly speaking, in atheism, there is no such thing as high moral ground. There can't be. There can't be any high moral ground because morality is reduced to relativism in virtually any atheistic scheme. And there is only one exception, and that's moral Platonism, but almost nobody goes that direction because they don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's like this is their go-to. It's like, how dare you say anything's wrong, evil, bad, worse, false. If Christianity is not true, you can't use those words. It is almost presuppositional the way he's talking right now. He did this when I asked him the poof or drown question. My voice is going here. I'm going to play this a little bit until my voice recovers.
Your turn.
Okay, so you're up in heaven with God, and he says to you, this is a hypothetical, and Yahweh looks at you, Greg, and says, of my creation, between a beautiful sunset and a clear night sky, which is more beautiful to you, Greg? Which would you choose? What would you say?
What would I say, whether I like a night sky or a sunlit day? It kind of depends on the circumstances. I like them both. Okay, if you're just asking what my preferences.
Yeah. Did you see what happened here? I asked Greg Kokel, what does he like better, the night sky or a sunset? Looking at the stars or looking at a sunset? What's your preference? He couldn't answer it. He was so terrified of being entrapped that he couldn't answer that question. And it was a trap question, but I'm suggesting to Christians, you embrace the trap. I was asking him a simple preference question to show that he could answer a simple one, and then ask him a tougher preference question later, but he wouldn't even go there. Like a beautiful night sky, does that show you the glory of God more so than, let's say, a sunset or a sunrise?
No, they're all different. My view is that the whole world is filled with the glory of God, and whether the sun is shining or it's raining doesn't matter. What I want to know is what you're getting at, though. Tell me what you're getting at, and I'll try to answer what you're getting at instead of doing all the hypotheticals.
Okay. Oh no, this will be a hypothetical. The next question is, so you're up in heaven. Don't give me hypotheticals. I'm going to give you a hypothetical. And this is the time of Noah and the flood. By the way, I don't consider this SE. This is just having fun.
Okay.
And Yahweh looks at you and says, man, Greg, you see all these people down there? They've been terrible. They've been unrighteous, except for Noah and his family. I'm going to execute my justice here, Greg. But I'm going to do it one of two ways, and I want your opinion out, Greg. I'm either going to flood them, or I'm going to just poof them out of existence. Just poof and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And he's asking your opinion. What do you say to God?
Okay, so you're asking me to make a moral assessment here, right?
No. See, this is exactly what he was saying with Cameron Bertuzzi. From the non-Christian worldview, you can't make any moral judgments or so forth. So Greg purposely asked me a question back. Well, you're asking me to make a moral judgment. And this is their go-to defense to questions like this is, oh, how dare you say something's wrong? But the question is, what's your preference? God tells you he's about to execute his justice. It's either going to be through proofing or drowning. What's your opinion? What's your preference? In both scenarios, in this hypothetical, it's moral because God's doing it. Whether God does A or whether God does B, if it's truly from God, it is moral by definition. I'm asking
You're
you for your...
asking me to make...
No.
No.
I'm asking for your preference on how to execute his justice.
It's a moral assessment. Which thing would be better or more appropriate? And what you want me to do is make a judgment on whether I think that what God actually did was the right thing to do. And the way you're testing it is to see my emotional reaction to the idea of drowning people as opposed to poofing them out. So the question that I'd have to ask is, what standard am I supposed to use when I make this moral judgment?
He's asking
against God.
He's asking your preference, Greg.
My preference then is to do what God did.
I should have clarified that you don't know what God's about to do. He's just asking the question.
My preference is to do what God did because my moral standard is that God is the moral standard of the universe.
See, that
and
wasn't
if he
that
made
hard,
that judgment... Pardon me?
That wasn't that hard. I should have left it right there, but I went on. And if you guys want to watch the rest, it's on my channel. But it's like they're so terrified. But some apologists are not. In fact, I just had an apologist yesterday admit to me, yes, Jesus. What was the exact quote? Yes, Jesus drowned babies. Get over it. I think that's what he said. Okay.
Muhlenberg, he debated William Lane Craig recently about it.
I'm using moral Platonism as a
Yeah.
Okay, but this is a rarefied, very sophisticated form. Your normal atheist isn't even going to know anything about Plato and Platonic forms or anything like that. So characteristically, 99% of atheists, their morality is reduced of necessity by their worldview to some form of subjectivism. It's either going to be a Darwinian kind of characterization or it's going to be a kind of a social contract thing. But that...
I asked, I should bring that one up too. I asked him about Hindus, and more specifically, Hare Krishna, who believe in a personal version of Krishna, who get their morality from Krishna. And I asked Greg Kokel, and I have this on record, I asked him, is this a objective standard of morality to believe in Krishna? And he squirmed over that one as well, because if he says yes, he's saying you can have objective standards based on something that's not real, that's false. If he says no, then he's saying, well, it's not just about Christianity and atheism, it's about Christianity and everything else. He has to now say that even the Jewish version of morality is not correct, not quite, because Jesus is out of the picture there. Same with Islam, and definitely with all the other religions.
Neither of those can give you any substantive weighty morality by which you could say, yeah, I'm taking the high moral road.
But he can do that. This is just so priceless. Look at actually his body language here.
Have weighty morality by which you could say, yeah, I'm taking the high moral road.
So atheists can't do that. They can't say, I'm taking the high moral road. But you can, Greg Kokel, you can act like that? I'm taking the high moral road?
All you're doing is what your society agrees to do, if that's your explanation.
And all you're doing is what you believe your God is saying to do. Why does your God's opinion matter? They don't like questions like that.
Of morality. or all you're
Because basically it's just by definition.
doing is acting out what your genes demand of you. That's all. Why is that moral? So I'd be curious to hear their response. What is it? Well, we care about truth. Why? How does truth itself become virtuous, since there cannot be any virtue in
Since there can't be any virtue.
atheism? Virtue is a moral quality.
Greg, it's a simple disagreement. We think there can be virtue. I think there can be virtue in truth without your God. And you disagree with me. It's a simple disagreement. And you can whine and complain and be as perplexed as you want to be, but that's the way it is.
Okay. And anyway, evolution doesn't choose for truth. It chooses for reproducibility. That's all.
Oh, and he learned this from Alvin Plantinga.
Not for truth. And many have made this point, including C.S. Lewis and Alvin Plantinga and others like him. So I'd be curious what an atheist
By the way, I haven't listened to this
had to say about
before.
that. That'd be a good question for your listeners to ask to atheists. Well, why are you campaigning so aggressively? What motivates you? Now, they're going to give some answer.
Yeah, I don't think, in general, street epistemologists are as aggressive as the evangelicals. Maybe, even if they are equal in their aggression. The bottom line is, when you look at real street epistemologists, meaning they're really on the street, they'll ask permission. Do you want to talk about a deeply held belief, or ask even political questions? Greg, they're free to say no and they're free to walk away. It's not like there's a gun to their head and forcing them to interact.
But I think that answer is going to be vulnerable to more questions, because I think the answer they give is not going to be able to make sense in a materialistic worldview. So it'd be interesting what that conversation will look like.
Yeah, and we just disagree on that.
So how do you respond to the problem of the unevangelized? This was actually one of the questions that my brother brought
Okay, this is the part where they talk about hell.
up when I first discussed with him.
Okay.
I don't know how
I know this because this part, I listened to a clip that someone posted on a Facebook group, like a 4-minute clip or something of this.
familiar you are with my story, but he became an atheist about 5-6 years ago, and that's what sent me on this journey in apologetics. So, for instance, this is basically the way that he put it.
Yeah, I've read Cameron's sort of testimony on this. Years ago, Cameron's brother, I guess, left Christianity, became an atheist, started asking Cameron questions, and Cameron felt inadequate. I don't want to put words in Cameron's mouth. You can read this for yourself. But my paraphrase of it, he felt inadequate, do I dare say stupid. He felt stupid in front of his brother. They didn't have the answers. And like all people of all, it's human nature, we want to defend our beliefs. And so he sought, seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened unto you in apologetics. And he found, wouldn't you know it, he found the answers he was looking for. And wouldn't you know it, that there were so many answers out there. And so therefore Christianity, by the way, Christianity is true, but maybe not. I should trademark that. Christianity is true, comma, but maybe not. TM.
There's a guy in Africa, he's never heard the gospel. How is this guy automatically condemned to hell to suffer eternal torment?
Okay,
how is that a
I'm
just
play
picture?
the tactical game plan here.
Okay, this is the part where I think a lot of Christians listening, I know a lot of Christians, I'm in some Facebook groups where the Christianity version is way different than these guys. And I think even I think Cameron's version of hell is changing. But there's a lot of Christians who just think the whole concept of that binary choice of heaven and hell is just ridiculous. And but they're talking like they both know what hell means and what it's like and so forth.
But not because I'm trying to be fancy-pantsy here. Because this is naturally the way I do it. So describe for me precisely the problem as your brother understands it. I followed what he said, but that's just a factual statement that how is this guy going to hell? So what is the problem here? What would be the problem if you want to play your brother for a moment here, what would be the problem? Notice, by the way, I'm sipping out of the role play for a second. I'm asking a clarification question. I want to get more information. I want to see what you understand about how our system works, because I think a proper understanding of our theological system solves the problem. It may not be psychologically satisfying.
If only you believed what I believed, it would solve the problem. He's speaking to Cameron's brother.
To some people, but I think there's a solution there. But I want you to talk a little bit more and give me a clearer idea.
So there's two ways that I'll respond. And the first way is how I think he would have responded in the conversation, which is to say that that's just immoral. That would be the first way. The second way, I think, which is more sophisticated.
Wait, what would be immoral about it? What would be immoral?
It would be unjust.
Unjust how? What? Tell me the, and I'm not being contentious here. I'm saying, what is the precise nature of the injustice?
The punishment should fit the crime.
What would he say? That the person goes to hell because he never heard of Jesus, so it is in virtue of a geographic accident?
No. See, well, okay, I know you're asking the question here, Greg Kokel, but it's almost like you're putting words in this in Cameron Bertuzzi's brother's mouth. Geography has nothing to do with it. It's, well, we'll see what Cameron Bertuzzi's brother says and whether Cameron's going to say it.
That he is punished? Is that the way you think?
I suppose.
Well, then you misunderstand Christianity, because nobody goes to hell, according to Christianity, because of a geographic accident. What do you understand the basis of judgment to be?
Oh, see, you notice what he did? He's saying nobody goes to hell based on geography, which I agree, according to most Christian theologies. But he's saying, on what basis are people judged? That's a separate question of who goes to heaven and who goes to hell. And Greg Kokel knows this, I think. How people are judged in hell and how people are judged in heaven is based on their works. There's scriptures to defend that. But your eternal destination, where you go, heaven or hell, according to this version of Christianity, is not based on your works and what you do, according to this version of Christianity. You know what Greg Kokel's doing here? It's like, it's so weaselly and slippery.
From the Christian perspective, I'm role-playing now still.
What do I?
What do you understand? Okay, you know, in Christianity, there's...
What Greg Kokel's really saying to Cameron Bertuzzi's brother right now is, man, you're ignorant. You don't even know your own Christianity, and you're thinking about leaving it.
Judgment, right?
Right.
Okay, so what is the basis of the judgment? Do you think the basis of the judgment is whether people have heard Jesus or not?
I would say...
See, this is so sneaky. It's clever. But if you answer, oh no, the basis of the judgment is works, then, oh, are you saying salvation is done by works then? Like our eternal destiny is based on what we do, how much we sin? You might as well call yourself a Muslim, Greg Kokel, if that's the way you believe.
He'd probably say yes.
Okay, well, that's a misunderstanding, and I'm sorry you think it this way. If you go to the end of the story, okay, and there's a judgment, and it says there in the judgment, all the people are before God, everybody, all the people you're concerned about, and you're rightfully concerned about, they're all standing there before God, and everyone is individually judged. What are they judged by? It says right there, they are judged according to their behavior, according to their deeds.
Sounds just like a Muslim, right?
Jesus said that every casual word that...
So here's a question right back at Greg Kokel. If I was there, if I was Cameron Bertuzzi's brother and Greg Kokel was asking me these questions, say, Greg Kokel, according to the standard of morality based on God and Jesus, you have a person who is even more moral than you, Greg Kokel, treats their fellow man, loves others as themselves, so forth, better than Greg Kokel. However, they don't believe in the core presuppositions of Christianity. They reject them. They reject Jesus. Will they suffer at all in eternity? At all? That's the question you asked to a guy like Greg Kokel. Because now it's, because he's saying you're judged by your works, and I'm giving a hypothetical of someone who works better than Greg Kokel, but yet does not believe Do they go to heaven? Do they go to hell? If they go to hell, do they suffer at all? In Greg Koukl's worldview, I don't know for sure, but I bet you he'd say, yeah, they go to hell, and yeah, they'll suffer a little, but not as much as the Hitlers of the world.
You speak, you will give an account of in the day of judgment, okay? So now here's my question of you.
So we're both role-playing.
I'm just going to let Bob, I'll call you Bob for the sake
Okay.
of discussion. I don't know what your brother's name is, but just say Bob. So my question of you, Bob, is this person that you have in mind who has never heard of Jesus, do you think this person has done any wrong things in their life that they need to answer for? What?
Oh my goodness. Greg Koukl is doing the Ray Comfort line. It's like, have you done anything? Have you ever looked at a woman lustfully? Have you ever stolen a pencil from an office? If the answer is yes to any of these above questions, you deserve hell. You are judged based on your actions.
What do you think?
Yeah, and if I was Cameron Bertuzzi's brother, I would question Greg Koukl right back. Well, have you done, a person doesn't believe in Jesus, but have they ever done anything good? Have they ever loved anyone and given of themselves to help them? Have they ever done anything like that? Does that make them a good person? And judged accordingly that they should maybe go to heaven even after rejecting Jesus? Greg Koukl said, of course not. You see how it's a one-way street? This is the same trick Ray Comfort uses.
Probably.
Yeah, that would be probably an understatement. I mean, if they just did 10 wrong things a day from the time they were 10 to 60, so we'll, on either end of that, we'll give them a free ride, but just those 50.
If you ever meet an apologist like Greg Koukl who asks this type of question, just give them that hypothetical I just said. A person is way better than you, way better than Greg Koukl in their actions, how they treat their fellow man, based on the definition of Jesus Christ and that morality and truth and system. But they reject Jesus Christ as Jesus. They don't confess him with their mouth. They don't take up their cross and follow him in all the other aspects. They might even believe Jesus Christ never even existed. How's that? They don't even believe Jesus Christ existed. Do they go to heaven? Do they go to hell? Ask Greg Koukl that question. And his whole idea of people being judged for going to hell who've never heard the gospel just fizzles at that point. Because he's making it sound like, oh, these people in the jungles who haven't heard of Jesus Christ, they still sin and they still look up at the night sky. They have no excuse. They deserve eternal punishment. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's Greg Koukl's view of hell. He is defending hell like a pro here.
Years, you've got something like 186,000 infractions of the law. That's just 10 a day. And, I've had 10 against me just during this conversation, just so you know. So in this
Who is he thinking about during this conversation?
particular case, if this person gets judged as guilty, how would that be unjust? Notice the question there. The claim is that it's unjust.
Right.
So I'm asking, how is that unjust? If given the person's guilt, regardless of whether they've heard of Jesus or not.
Right.
So how is that unjust?
Because the punishment doesn't fit the crime?
So at that point, I'd have to throw up my hands. Bob is throwing up his hands. I don't have an answer to that.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so the theology here is that people don't get condemned because they rejected Jesus. That's not there. That's not there at the Great White Throne Judgment. They are condemned according to their works. And this is all through the New Testament.
Whoa. You're not condemned for rejecting Jesus. You're condemned for your works. So Greg Koukl is pretty much a Muslim in this aspect. It's a works-based salvation. Is this right? I would not have expected this.
They are condemned according to their works. And this is all through the New Testament. Okay, lots of places,
He used the word condemned, not judged.
And that's the grounds or the basis for the judgment. So even a person who never hears about the remedy is still responsible for their own behavior before a sovereign. All right? And so there's no injustice here. Now, somebody may say, well, it's not fair.
So if you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ, you ask him into your heart, you take up your cross, you try to follow him, but you do, and Greg Koukl even admitted he's committed 10 sins during the course of this conversation. How many sins does it take, Greg Koukl, to go to heaven? I mean, to go to hell? Why isn't Greg Koukl going to hell? Well, because it's been washed in the blood of Jesus, Greg Koukl would say, I think. Well, but what if a person in Africa hasn't heard about the blood of Jesus? How can they be condemned? Well, because they're responsible, they're guilty. But you're guilty too. How come you don't go to hell? Well, because I'm washed in. But you've heard the good news. They haven't. This is why there's Calvinists in the world, by the way. It makes this issue moot. But for the non-Calvinists, you got a problem on your hands now.
Because they didn't hear. Well, are you presuming that if they heard, they would have bent their knee?
Maybe. At least give them a chance, right?
And receive the mercy that is being offered? How would you know?
We don't, but God knows, right? And do you think there are some people on this planet that hear the gospel for the first time and accept it? Yeah. And if they're judged by their works and they don't hear the gospel and don't accept it, they're going to hell, right? For just simply not knowing? Not their fault they didn't hear. Now, they could even believe in God, Greg Koukl. They could believe in a God because of Romans, it says, look up in the heavens, no excuse. But they don't believe in the Christian God. They would still go to hell, right? Right? Get Greg Koukl on the phone.
Anyone who knows that would be God. And I'm pretty convinced that anybody who would do that, God would get the message to them. That's another theory.
Oh, he's basically saying everyone who has not heard the gospel, we're doomed to begin with. That's what he's saying. Did you guys hear that? He is a Calvinist.
I'm pretty convinced that anybody who would do that, God would get the message to them. That's another theory.
And so the people who have not heard the good news, the gospel, are the people who Greg Koukl is convinced that would have rejected even if they would have heard. And God knows this, so therefore he's still just and fair, because they would have rejected it anyhow. Yeah, this is very Calvinistic.
Theological issue. But all I'm doing now is addressing the question of the injustice. Notice how, we're out of the role play now, but notice how I'm using my questions, because I know what's wrong here. I know there's a wrong assumption about Christian theology, okay? And there's a charge against Christianity. It's unjust. Okay, tell me precisely what is the nature of the injustice.
Punishment doesn't fit the crime.
And I noticed, even in your case, you're thinking, I don't know how to answer that. Because people make these charges as if the charge is completely obvious, and who would miss this? But then when asked...
What's unjust is someone can rape and murder and be a thief, and then a week before their death, accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and personal Savior, die, and go to heaven. And someone can be just the most loving, caring, giving, thoughtful person on the planet. Of course, they make mistakes like anybody else, but for the most part, a real benefit to society, but never accept Jesus. In fact, they might even be a mythicist and believe Jesus never existed, and die and go to hell. For a lot of people, Greg Koukl, that seems unjust. You yourself said you're judged based on your works. So how many bad things do you have to have in order to miss the cutoff from heaven to hell? You sound like a version of a Muslim Calvinist.
To spell it out, they have a hard time. Even the problem of evil. Okay, well, you got a problem of evil, right, Christian? What's the problem? Well, there's evil in the world. Yeah, I'm glad you think there is.
The problem is, if this God knew that evil would exist by creating, he created anyhow, knowing what would happen. This is why there's Christians out there who have to weaken the the whole concept of omniscience, because if God knew what would happen and he created anyhow, then he's somewhat responsible for his creation. The buck stops at the top, right, Greg Kokel? I got an apologist, Jonathan Pritchard, to admit that to me yesterday, that God, in one sense, is responsible for sin. Richard Pritchard, and I quote, I paraphrase because I don't have it in front of me, God, in one sense, is responsible for sin, because if he would have not created, there would be no sin.
Okay, well, you're in God, you got God, right? So there's the problem. What exactly is the problem? And if once they spell it out, like in a syllogism or something kind of like a line of reasoning, they're going to make a mistake, because it turns out that there is no logical inconsistency.
See, he's equating, here's another, like, this is a weasel move. He's saying there's no problem because it's not logically inconsistent. You can have something that's logically consistent and still be a problem.
Between evil and God's goodness and God's power, God's existence.
Murder is not logically inconsistent, but that's still a problem for most people.
There's none. Philosophers know this and the deductive problem of evil, but this is why I want to get people to spell these things out. So all I'm doing is gathering information at this point, but the person is giving me what I need to go further with it. And this is where the apologetics kind of comes in. So we've kind of gone full circle in this little role play with your original question.
Well, Greg, it's been such a pleasure to do this. I mean, it's more of a conversation. This wasn't even really an interview, so it was really great to have you on.
That's the way these things should be. That's the way doing radio myself for 29 years, I think I want those kinds of interviews to be conversations that people can eavesdrop in on. I
was just going to say that I get the impression that Cameron Bertuzzi's view on hell has changed over the years. I can't tell you exactly why I feel that way, but I would love to ask him at some point, what was your view on hell 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and today? My guess is it's changed. My guess is he is becoming more liberal. Oh, that's a dirty word, right? He's becoming more open to the idea, let's say, of a nihilism. I don't think he would ever go to universalism. Or that hell is not really that bad, especially if you're a good person, because you're judged based on your works, Greg Kokel says. So you'll still go to hell, but it won't be as bad as some other versions of hell. Probably that whole locked doors in the inside thing, C.S. Lewis type idea. Oh man, the stuff the stuff you have to put together in your brain in order to believe this stuff is just amazing to me. Anyhow, that was very enjoyable for me. Chen, do you know if Bertuzzi does go with the separation of God idea? Because I don't know if that's true or not. But I know that a lot of Christians distance themselves strongly from the traditional view of hell. And I'm getting the sense that Bertuzzi might be one of them. But I'm also believe that he used to be very much the traditional view. I could be wrong. Hey, you're welcome, Susan. You'll get your proof, don't worry. Ridgebridge Street Epistemology Club. Check them out. Ray Kokel thinks you're up to no good there, Redbridge. Hey, thanks DB Cisco. Appreciate the Lucifer donation. So for those of you who came late, why I do what I do, I gave a nice little rant there. Somewhere in the middle. Hey, thank you, Karen from Canada. You're very welcome. Thank you for the donation. Hey, Mike McDougall, if you just got here, I'm poofing out. Poof. My apologies to Greg Kokel. He was scheduled to come on, but we ran out of time. Have a great day, guys.